Again, everyone, and welcome back to the front line with Joe and Joe Pasillo. As always, joined by Joe Resinello. And once more, dear brothers and sisters, let us go into the breach. And into the breach, Joe, we're going tonight. 9 o'clock Eastern time, every Thursday night. Please, when you get a chance, and wherever you're watching this, whether it be Rumble, YouTube, Facebook, X, please like, subscribe, share, do all that fun stuff. Now, tonight, Joe, I like to think that all of our conversations have relevance, but this one not only has relevance, and I hate to sound like a lib. I hate to sound like somebody who uses the word scary and throws it around all the time. Not really saying the stuff we're going to be talking about tonight. It's legit scary. And everybody's going to understand why. I want to play a clip, Joe, and then we're going to talk about it because this is what's going on in Canada. This is what's going on in Europe, and this is coming soon to an American theater near you, by the way. So I'm going to let Russell Brand tell us about it real quick.
His new C-63 bill will allow the Canadian government to imprison people for life in order to protect children or to imprison political opponents. What do you think Justin Trudeau and the globalists are more interested in? His new C-63...
Now, that was a quick clip, okay? And we're going to get into it a lot more. Joe, that's exactly what's going on. So, well, let me throw it over to you for an initial comment, and then we're going to break this bill down a little bit. Joe, I'm not scared of much, okay? But when the government's going to come knocking on my door because they don't like what I have to say, then I say, guess what? Don't talk to me about Western civilization. Don't talk to me about rights. Don't talk to me about the Constitution because I don't want to hear it because you're taking away my right to speak freely. I don't care what you call hate speech. I have no concern about that whatsoever. I have free speech guaranteed to me by the First Amendment of the Constitution. Joe, let me ask you a question. I know I said I was going to hand it over to you, but now the veins already popping out of my head, okay? To me, let me ask you a question. If someone was to burn an American flag in front of American veterans, is that hate speech to you?
I kind of think it is.
I think it is too. I think it's very disrespectful, very hurtful. I think under their definition, I'd call that hate speech. Yet the libs, the left, Antifa, the rest of them, you could burn an American flag, but I can't call a him. I can't call a her. I can't call abortion baby killing. And I can't say any other thing that goes against the leftist narrative because Justin Trudeau, and like I said, coming soon to an American theater near you, wants to put me in jail. Joe, I got to throw it over to you.
Well, let's just kind of sketch out what this is. And then, because I have my views. I agree with you. This is incredibly dangerous. It is incredibly dangerous. Basically, what they're doing is they're legitimizing censorship under the guise, as Russell Brand said, of protecting children. That's the cloak. Now, what is this bill? As he said, C-63. What it's doing is it's establishing an independent body called the Digital Safety Commission of Canada. They're not elected. That's important. First point, they're not elected. They serve 5-year terms. And basically what they can do is determine what hate speech is. They determine it. Also, hatred is defined in the bill as an emotion. Once again, they determine that particular emotion and what defines hate. Now, actually, again, under the guise of protecting children, it will ultimately be political. In this bill, you could be fined from $20,000 to $50,000 to what Russell Brand said, life in prison. No lie. Look it up. That is incredibly dangerous. Another aspect of this bill, it criminalizes, it's embedded in the criminal code, hate speech. It is a criminal offense. And here's the kicker. You could get arrested on a pre-crime basis. Get this, the possibility of offending someone. I'm not making this up.
But that means that, real quick, that means that if the government sees you coming out of a church.
Bingo! My wife and I were saying this. You hit it right on the head.
You're saying that person is a potential criminal.
Say, for instance, I'll just set the stage. Your wife has a veil on her head, and you're coming out of a Latin mass.
You're done.
They could say, I am assuming that you do not validate same-sex marriage. And by saying that you only view marriage between a man and a woman, that is hate speech. We're bringing you in because we believe, very rightly, because that's probably the way you would view it, as I would view it, as any good Catholic or any good Jew or any Muslim would view it, that marriage is between a man and a woman. That's a pervasive idea across the Abrahamic religions all over the world. But if they believe, based upon this pre-crime basis possibility, by the way, that's in the bill, I'm not making this up, you could get arrested. Now, to your point, I wanted to flush that out just to give people some idea what this is all about. So before we start, they think we're just kind of overreaching. No, this is very dangerous. This is incredibly dangerous. Ultimately, this is full on totalitarian state. I mean, full on in your face. And if you live in a country that goes in that direction, you have to leave. Like if I was in America and they did that, that's why people migrate. I could not live there. And if nowhere in the world, because again, as you said rightfully, Joe, this is going on in the UK. I saw a clip. You saw it as well. Ireland is looking at this. Australia. This is happening in real time. Canada has a judiciary. Their Supreme Court, sadly, is controlled by the liberal arm of the government. Ours is not, thank God. That's the last bastion of hope for America right now. But ultimately, if you live in a country like that, or say there's nowhere else to go in the world, you got to go underground, because that means that they could just arrest you, arbitrarily arrest you. That's what goes on in North Korea. That goes on in Iran. That goes on in Afghanistan.
How do they possibly think? I mean, Joe, this is another thing too. I mean, this always leads me to believe that that's why there's shadiness as far as elections are concerned. That's why there's a need for independent social media that's not beholden to the corporate media establishment. How do they think that this is going to go over with people? How do they think that? Because guess what, Joe? I turn around and say, okay, what happens when the other party gets in power? Now, I'm going somewhere with this. The other party gets in power and say, guess what? We're gonna deem everything you say to be hate speech. Here's the difference: they have the media, Joe, and we don't. So they'll dress this up, like you said, to protect children. Protect children from what? That I'm gonna say on Twitter, on X. I'm going to say that I'm going to vote for Donald Trump, which is going to be considered a hate crime. We're already deplorable. Joe Biden's declared war on us. Merrick Garland has declared war on us. We know we're talking about Canada, but that this model is coming soon to us.
No question. Actually, that's what Russell Brand said in the clip when he covered it in Ireland. He basically believes, and it's not a bad theory, that the globalists test these things in Ireland, in Canada, before they go. I'm not knocking our Canadian listeners, before they go for the United States. It's a test run in and that is a possibility. Ultimately, it will come to the U.S. And then we're finished. Then, to be honest with you, you have to go underground. I mean, that's what people do in North Korea. That's what people do.
How do you go underground? What is
that? You can't. This show ends. You can't say things. You have to watch what you say to people.
But Joe, that's not a long-term tenable position. People, I'm not saying us, and I'm not advocating it. People are not going to put up with that. Listen, you get Joe Bob and a bunch of his friends down in Texas, and they go to jail.
The government mows Joe Bob down.
I'm not saying that. I'm not saying that. You're right. You said it before, and I agree with you 1,000%. The government will come down on you like a ton of bricks. You think these guys give a crap? You take away their right to free speech. You don't think they'll walk dead.
There's no coup that's ever been successful in the 20th century without the army. That's historically factual. And this happened in Russia for 40 years. 1 in 10 people went to jail. In the Soviet Union, went to gulags. 1 in 10. This already happened in history. And then it ended. But my point is, are we going that severely in that direction? Because here's the thing. I was talking to my wife about it. You either have to then go full on totalitarian. To your point, you can easily control the people as long as you have the army and the police. Easily, dude. No guy in a tree stance is going to stop an Apache helicopter. That's a delusion. A delusion. Just like in Seattle when they had that little stupid community during COVID, the second the police wanted to crush it, they crushed it in 3 seconds. Yeah, I watched it actually happen. They walked in a line. They just absolutely just dismantled it. The point is, it's going to come to a head where we are no longer even pretending it's a democracy. Now it's full on. We are a totalitarian state. But why are they doing this? And this is what you were alluding to, and I'll just expand on it. Because they can't control the people without controlling the means of information. They know this. They know it. They know it so clearly that they're willing to go to this extreme because they know that Jim Bob in Texas and in Arkansas, they can't have.
And then, Joe, then I know this is going to get taken down on Twitter and Facebook. I don't care. Then that means they're cheating in elections because there's no way a candidate who would propose anything like this, Joe, whether it's Canada here or in Europe, I'm sorry. There's a universality to this. People don't want to be stifled in what they say by the government. And if you're going to put my neighbor in jail or me in jail, okay, forget about going to jail. How about finding me $20,000 or 20,000 euros?
Could be 200,000.
Most people can't afford that. Now I know they tried to pull this nonsense in New York. By the way, let me throw something back out there to you. Went over like a lead balloon, and I think that the law is still on the books. Do you know that if you get in an argument in New York City, let's say with if you get into an argument and you use what's considered to be a racial epithet, okay, a racial or ethnic epithet, you could be fined up to $250,000. That was there when I was working in the city.
No, I remember that.
I don't think it's ever been enforced in any meaningful way because we know about it. But that's been floated in America. Bill de Blasio, okay, was responsible for that gem of a piece of legislation. So we can't say that it's not here or people aren't willing to try it here. But here's what it leads me to believe are two things. Number one, elections are rigged, both in Canada and the rest of the world, okay, and here. And number two, nothing's going to change until the media is broken up.
Well, here's the deal. Elections, it's more of the political state is rigged, Joe. Both parties are in the bag. That's the problem.
Joe, let's be fair. Republicans are not proposing this.
I understand that. No, I get this, but will they actively fight against it? Will Pierre Poilievre try to repeal it?
He would have
here's
to.
Another thing. Can he? Can he? Once it's memorialized into law, do you know how hard that is to get out of the books?
See, but Joe, here's what I don't understand. I mean, maybe I'm dumb, maybe I'm naive. Okay, the First Amendment to the Constitution says clearly, Congress shall make no law abridging the right to free expression of your religion, the right to free speech, and the freedom of association, and on and on. Okay, religion's first, speech is second. How much more clear does it have to be?
No, I get it. Right now, this wouldn't fly in the courts in America because, again, the Supreme Court is what it is. It could happen.
But Canada's
their court isn't like ours. Like in terms of they don't have a solid 5, like fairly sane, lucid constitutionalists. They don't. It's their court is co-opted. But it could easily happen. I could easily set the scenario. Joe Biden wins the election. Clarence Thomas retires and say Justice Alito died. Just now you have 2 Ketanji Browns. Now you have 3. You have Sotomayor. You have Kagan. Now you got 5 with Roberts, 6. We're done. Religious liberty, throw it out. Freedom of speech gets curtailed because but the danger, like this has happened in history. And could it happen in America? Absolutely. I can't even believe it's happening in Canada, but it is. It is. And people have to see through this. Because frankly, yes, is there danger on the internet to kids? Yeah. Recently, I've seen a number of clips with Mike Knowles about AI where, say, you have your daughter who's a freshman in high school, and they basically put out a video of her having sex. It's not her, and they float it around. That is harmful, and that they wrap
That's
that.
a crime, but that's an
No,
actual crime.
but they're actually wrapping that in this. You see, that's the umbrella. That's legit. But here's another thing. If you really wanted to protect kids on the internet and you were serious, how about pornography? How about make it impossible for young people under 18? They don't do that because it's money. And they're perfectly fine with that.
So they'll censor you and me,
Right.
and right up the food chain.
No, that's fine.
But pornography's totally fine.
That's fine for kids. Look at what they're teaching kids in schools. They're talking about oral sex to 9-year-olds, 8-year-olds, showing pictures.
Have you ever seen some of these?
No, I don't, Joe. I swear I can't. I can't. But I've read about it. Through the things that we kind of.
No. What I'm saying is, like, if you watch, here's what again, Joe, I don't understand. Are people paying attention? The people that allow all that stuff that you were just talking about into the schools, into the libraries, and everything else. You have people, parents and others, going up in front of the school board, reading from that very book that's being allowed by the Board of Education they're addressing. And you know how they're being shut down? Oh, that's inappropriate language here at the school board. Okay, you're making my point. You effing idiot. You're making my point.
Sad.
Okay, that's right. If you don't want to hear it and it's inappropriate in this setting where there's no kids around, how about it's inappropriate when there's nothing but kids around? What's the issue there?
I saw a mom go up in a lingerie and read it. That, to be honest, to make her point. But yes, same deal. This is dangerous, and frankly, like I said, it's got to come to a point. It's going to either go full on totalitarian, where this is a totalitarian law, unquestionable. Call it whatever you want, Canada, Justin Trudeau, whatever. This is going to be used as a political weapon because they have to use it because they can't control the people.
Joe, is he going to get beat in the election?
Yeah, most probably. It'll be interesting to see how far Poilievre pushes it, though, because ultimately Poilievre, know what it's like, Joe? I'll be honest with you, and this is where, like you said, like the elections are could be tampered, and frankly, mail-in ballots are questionable. It's definitely not showing ID is problematic. Barack Obama mentioned mail-in ballots as being problematic. So did the bipartisan commission with what's his face, Baker and Carter.
But go ahead.
But that's neither here nor there. The government is funded all the centers of power. You see, this is what we let this happen. This happened for decades. They control everything, and they give them money. So how far are they going to let Pierre Poilievre push it? And that's the problem in America. Like, it's, for instance, we talk about what's her face? I remember in South Dakota, what the heck's her name?
Kristi Noem.
She backed down because basically the corporations pulled levers on her. We'll pull out. We'll pull out of your state. You're going to lose jobs. And ultimately, they know if they lose jobs, they lose votes. And that is what happens. That's what ESG is. ESG is a way to get around the laws. It's strangulation. It's similar, not as hard, but similar to freezing a bank account. It's where corporations and governments work together to do exactly what I just said, because they control all the institutions of power. And that's the problem. You see, we have to take back the message. And we talked about this last week. You control the press by making it free, but you hold the press accountable by lowering the libel and the slander standards where you can sue them. He calls me a racist. You have no means to call me a racist. We're going to court like the Salmons did, and they got big money. That is how you control the message. What you also have to do is control the schools. You see, they get it. They're aggressive. They are absolutely controlling the minds of these young kids from an early age all the way through college. And then they become movers and shakers in the world. And they bought in, all in. They don't believe in God. They believe in, frankly, they're all secular humanists. They all believe in this climate cult. And frankly, they're bulldozing people. Canada is killing its poor through the MAID program. Canada is killing the mentally ill because they're costly and they want to get rid of them because, frankly, they don't like people. Globalists don't like people because they're messing up the environment. We've gone through that on this show time and time again, people saying there's too many people. And this is what secular humanists do because they don't believe in God. And you know something? It's the indifferent people. The indifferent people who think, oh, it doesn't matter. You want someone to run everything that doesn't believe in God? I got news for you. They're coming after for you next. And that's the truth.
Well, the thing is, too, and we're seeing it in their language if people would pay attention, okay? You're right. When you're dealing with people who have no moral boundaries whatsoever, let's be clear, Joe, about who Justin Trudeau represents. Justin Trudeau, by the way, is a puppet. Some of our Canadian friends are saying that in the chat room here at the front line with Joe and Joe. Please, wherever you're seeing this video, if you like what Joe and I do, like, subscribe, share, help us out a little bit. Let's just say, for argument's sake, Trudeau is a, he actually pulls any strings, which he does not. Okay. Again, it's like at what point, because people need to open their eyes. Look at someone who, let's say, is one of the spokesmen for the New World Order, for the globalists. Okay. And I mentioned this before. Yuval Harari is out there saying that rights are something that we've made up to make ourselves feel better. He actually said, Joe, if you cut a person open and you look inside, you don't see any rights. This guy, Joe, has power and influence because he's Klaus Schwab's little false prophet. Okay. And I would remind everybody what the Bible says, what happens to the false prophet. Okay. That's what he is. He is a little God-forsaken, secular homosexual. And he's all in on the WEF. He's all in on the New World Order. And he's saying flat out, you don't have any rights. Joe, right now, you don't have any right to free speech. One little leap forward from there, or backward, however you want to see it, is sooner or later, you have no right to life. Now, we know that the unborn don't have a right to life, but you mentioned the Soviet Union. 1 out of 10 people went to the Gulag. What'd they do? Live out there in their retirement in Siberia? No, they died. They died.
Most did.
Gulag.
Okay. And by the way, Alexander Solzhenitsyn, who went to the Gulag, why he went, he wrote a letter to a friend. It wasn't even over the top. He basically alluded to something Stalin said. It wasn't even and he was arrested. He served 10 years in prison, and then he was in exile for another 5, right, living in some remote part. The only reason why he lived because he was smart and he was used to teach school. He would have died otherwise.
Right.
So and this happened. You see, people in America and in the West, we don't think, these people, the power brokers, they realize full well they cannot control the people anymore with this internet. They can't control them because the press before was in the bag. How long we probably didn't see so many things. Now we're starting to see so much more.
See it all. You see it all.
And they cannot afford that. You see, that's why I say they're the real enemy. They are the real enemy. The enemy is the establishment. We have to take our country back. Canada has to take our country back. It's not a country of the people. But that's a facade.
But you can't do that without a free and fair election.
Well, even with the election, you see, I'll even set this scenario. Say Trump wins. Do you actually think that the Senate and the Congress is going to let him do what he really wants to do? Even Republicans. There's not enough of them.
I think whatever he can do as the president, and let's be real. All right. The president has a significant amount of power.
There's no doubt.
A lot of problems for Congress, and he could veto every bill they
send.
No,
I realize that, but I'm talking about making laws because that's the name of the game. Executive orders come and go; they get ripped up the second the next guy comes in.
But he could, let's say, he could direct the Attorney General of the United States to do certain actions. He could direct the Attorney General to look at certain legal aspects of let's say, of a variety of different things.
Joe, you're right. You're
he
right.
could abolish federal agencies, or
I
at the very least, he could because they fall under the executive branch. Maybe he can't, let's say, for argument's sake, abolish the Department of Education, but he certainly could put them through the ringer. He
No,
could
no, you're
restructure
right,
them.
Joe. There's a lot. That's why they don't want him, because what Donald Trump is suggesting, and this is why they say he's a threat to democracy. It's not democracy. It's a threat to them, their power.
Well, we're
It's
gonna play that clip in a few minutes.
But in terms of even like we'll continue with Trudeau. We'll make our final points. I mean, ultimately, Justin Trudeau is shrewder than we think. What he knows is he can't control the masses without controlling the message. And that's what this is about. And this is what all of the countries in the West are doing. Australia, in the UK, France. France is going to ban Twitter. Ban it outright. Not allowed. France. Because they cannot have people like Tucker Carlson, Russell Brand, Ben Shapiro, who have millions upon millions of views, who are basically saying things that goes against their narrative, which means they can't control the people and have a pretend election.
Well, they're doing that in France because they don't want
that.
They don't want the farmers getting the message anymore because they don't want to get manure sprayed on their buildings anymore. And I'm not even joking.
Well, that's true. That's exactly right. But if those voices aren't there, the farmers don't know anything. And that's the way they want it. And that is going to come to the U.S. very soon. It really is. Like we talked to Rusty Reno, who's the senior editor for First Things. He wrote an article. He talks about a post-democratic era that's going to come to the West. That is absolutely spot on.
Everything we just spoke about for the last 20 minutes.
That's exactly right. And that's the direction because, Joe, I'm going to be honest with you. Power is never given. They're never going to give the power back to the people. Power is taken. And during the COVID era, the largest transfer of wealth in the history of the United States, and it all went north. That was taken from the middle class. The government picked the winners and they picked the losers. And you suffered. By the way, the climate cult is another tool that's used to take power away from the middle class. Look at the price of cars. Look at the price of gas. Look at the price of food. All because of what they did. They transferred the economic model away from oil and gas. All the prices went up. It's not the corporations. Yes, they're taking advantage of what was created because of the transition, the economic transition. Wake up.
Right.
Like it's a power play and they're not going to give it back. This is nothing about democracy. It's about power and it has nothing to do with regular people. Sadly, people are blind to it, Joe.
You know, we had a clip. We weren't able to play it for copyright reasons. We couldn't get it. But Nikki Haley conceding the other night and backing out, saying she's suspending her campaign. She had the balls to call herself conservative. She said, I've been a conservative. Nikki Haley is a perfect example of what you're talking about, how she'd be the type of Republican that would go for something like this. Oh, yeah, we do have to protect the children. Stop. And there's not enough Josh Hawleys and Mike Lees.
Agreed.
I think those guys are authentic. I really do.
I think they're good. I like Josh
Hawley. Not enough of them. I mean, and you would think that after like guys like Lindsey Graham and some of these others, okay, I'd like to tell them sometimes, Lindsey, you call yourself a conservative. Why don't you just go over to the other side of the aisle? Because you seem to do everything they want you to do anyway. So why don't you just put a D at the end of your name? He won't do it because he's in South Carolina.
Well, Joe, okay. It's also a lottery ticket. Nikki Haley knows damn well that you become the president, become a multimillionaire. Joe Biden bought his vacation home after being in public service for 50 years with cash, $3 million. Where'd he get that?
Right.
Where'd you get that?
Joe, if you ask that question, and you're a Canadian citizen, you could go to jail or get
fined. I'm just saying, like, this is like the type of question
that hate speech
should be asking. Like, where'd you get that money, Joe? Like, let me see.
I'll tell you what. I will say this, at least in America. Okay, let's pivot to America. You're listening to the Front Line with Joe and Joe Pasillo, Joe Rossinello. Wherever you're seeing this, please help us out. Share, like, subscribe, do all that fun stuff. You see it in the press scrum at the White House. Okay, you're seeing more and more people with some stones. Okay, we interviewed one of them, James Rosen. James Rosen was put on an enemies list. He was investigated by Barack Obama. So this is not a recent development, this bill in Canada, Joe. We've seen it. When reporters are under investigation by a United States president, I mean, James Rosen went through that. There are others in that press room who are voicing these things. Of course, you know, there's a spin for everything in that, whatever her name is, Karine Pianger or whatever. And I won't insult her because she's Haitian and our wives are Haitian. But nonetheless, I don't think too highly of her. They spin everything. Let's pivot and let's play in. For all you people out there, I don't mean to nauseate you. I don't want to nauseate you. Joe and I want to have an entertaining show, but we also have to be informative. So this someone who was a party girl just 20 years ago, who slept her way to the top of California politics, became a United States senator, and then was plucked by the oligarchs to become the vice president of the United States. I speak of none other than Kamala Harris. Listen to this drivel, and then we'll come back.
When we think about the strength of our democracy, you know, I think that there's a duality to the nature of democracy. When it's intact, oh, it's so strong in terms of what it does to uphold and protect individual rights and freedoms. So strong in its nature. And it is very fragile. It will only be as strong as our willingness to fight for it.
Okay, Kamala, I want to fight for it. You're trying to shut down. You see, her version of democracy, Joe. Democracy so strong. Democracy is when everybody thinks like she does. When anybody dissents from her, and I give her too much credit. She doesn't have an original thought in her head. Those who think like her, those who put her in place, her puppet masters, okay? Democracy's weak and it's fragile when you would dare to vote for somebody other than Joe Biden. If you're in California, if you would dare to vote for Steve Garvey, former Los Angeles Dodger, I believe, is running for U.S. Senate against Adam Schiff. Okay. If you would dare to vote for Steve Garvey over Adam Schiff, or you would dare to vote for even Ron DeSantis. Okay. That's when democracy is fragile and it's worth fighting for. I'll tell you what, Kamala. Okay. What all of you are doing is what Joe and I and everybody knows who has a brain cell knows. You're projecting. You don't value democracy. You don't want democracy. You don't want what you always call diversity. What you want is diversity of skin color and people and rainbow flags. But you don't really want diversity of thought. You don't want look at the way, Joe, how's this? Look at the way the left treats homosexuals that don't agree with the leftist agenda. They're persona non grata too. See, you're only a good homosexual if you're a good liberal. So
it's
if
the same thing with African Americans.
That's exactly right. You could call Clarence Thomas the N-word if you're Rachel Maddow, and you will get a pass. But if you and I said the same thing about Ketanji Brown Jackson, I guess under this new legislation, we would probably end up going to jail. Joe, I'm throwing it over to you.
Well, I mean, again, that's where the democracy word, they control the messaging, Joe. I mean, that's the key. They control the messaging. And that's why, to be honest with you, the people are at a great disadvantage. There are millions and millions and millions of good people. That's why I always say it's we the people, because I'm going to be honest with you. The majority of Americans aren't ideologues. They're not on either side. I mean, because I talk to people, my neighbors. They're not political ideologues. They're normal people. Sadly, a lot of people just don't pay attention. But a lot of people, frankly, they just go to work. They love their kids. They pay their bills, and they function in society. But a lot of this stuff, like what Justin Trudeau just tried to do, they put umbrellas around it. You look in New Jersey when they pass one of these like school bills that allow like transing kids at the age of like 8. They do it on a Friday at 4:30. Nobody knows. It's not covered in the press. They control the messaging. They control the institutions. We have to take that back. And that is a process of information, stuff like this. People have to talk. And that's why the internet is important. That's why free speech is important. But we can't expect the press to do that. They're not going to do it.
Well, they're not going to do it. That's why at the end of the day, we started out this show by playing a clip from Russell Brand just to introduce this idea of this Canadian legislation. That's why Tucker Carlson is public enemy number one. That's why Elon Musk is public enemy number
Even
one.
Joe Rogan is.
I was just going to say, Joe Rogan is somebody who we would probably disagree with on more things than we agree with. However, nobody could accuse Joe Rogan of being in a bag for somebody.
Let me, because I listen to him periodically, and I listened to a clip. Joe Rogan is a self-professed liberal, but he's sane. And what do I mean by sane? Like, to your point, a lot of issues, Joe Rogan does not believe in traditional marriage being the only marriage. He's for a lot of things that Catholics, like, we're not for active homosexuality. It's a sin. As a Catholic, we're not for transgendering. Like, he's not for kids, but in terms of adults, I think that's a horrible thing. I think, frankly, it's a mental illness, and psychology has said that for quite some time. They've been bullied, and they can't say it anymore, but I'm going to say it because I believe it to be the truth, and it is the truth. Joe Rogan has said, I've seen him on his show, they've pushed me out of that. He calls it a cult. He does. He actually calls the radical left a cult because, frankly, he has some, if you ask me, he has some, like, he'll look himself in the mirror. And most people are like that. I'm telling you.
You know who did that? Interestingly enough, real quick, just in the chat room, got a few new viewers. Got Edward, Linda, Dave's here. What's up, Dave? Mad Guardian, Tom. You got Johnny William. Stephen James is here. Sylvie's here. We got a good Bible Vibe CQ. We got a good crowd. You know who did that? And I do respect it. Joe, listen, I don't expect that everybody who, let's say, for argument's sake, is against what we're against necessarily is going to agree with us on a lot of things. I get that. We could find common ground. I think we certainly would agree that this movement against free speech, both in Canada and here, or this drivel that Kamala Harris was talking about democracy, is just a lot of projection. It's a lot of nonsense, okay? They're the authoritarians. They're the fascists. They're the dictators. But it is encouraging when you said something about Joe Rogan. He's a liberal. He seems to be open-minded. He certainly, it seems, is against a lot of this cancel culture and everything else. David Mamet, who for decades was a darling of the left. He was a darling of the theater, the movie and theater elites in America, right? American Buffalo, Glengarry Glen Ross. He said straight up, I'm paraphrasing, but he said, I looked in the mirror one day and I questioned what it is that I was saying that I believed in, and realized that I didn't believe it. You know what happened after he said he wasn't a liberal anymore? Not invited to the barbecue, or in his case, not invited to the cocktail party. Persona non grata. All of a sudden, magazines are writing articles about David Mamet. You know what? He really wasn't that great a playwright after all. You praised him for 40 years. What are you talking about? 30, 40 years. All of a sudden, he says he's questioning you. He's not some dyed-in-the-wool Roman Catholic, let's say, like conservative American, but he did question what he believed, his liberal beliefs, and said, I don't really believe that stuff. And now he's a self-identified conservative. And you know what he is, Joe? He's canceled. He's cut off. In the future, guy like him, he goes to jail under Trudeau's regime. Go ahead.
Well, again, we just have to get our power back. I think there's enough people. We have to realize, in my opinion, because I'll just use an example, immigration. It's never getting resolved because they don't want it to be resolved, because the people who control everything don't want it to be resolved. And that is what, if you ask me, I think we're distracted. I've been doing this long enough to see all the differences are real. The issues are real. Immigration, it's a real issue. But the argument's a distraction that's never going to be resolved until we take the country back. We don't have control of the country. Regular people really don't have a seat at the table. It's a facade. The vote is a facade. Washington is run by a donor class. They run it. And that is what we have to take back. Then we could have a civil discussion. then we'll talk.
I
But
think the first key. I'm sorry, Joe. I know. I'm sorry to cut you off. I don't. I believe most Americans. I do believe this in my heart at heart. I said this before. I'll say it again here at the front line with Joe and Joe. California is not as blue as they tell you it is, and New Jersey is not as blue as they tell you it is, and New York is not as blue as they tell you it is. And you know why I know that? Do you know why we know that at the front line with Joe and Joe? DeSantis proved it in Florida. He instituted election reform. And you know what we found out? Broward County and Miami-Dade County are not blue counties.
Joe,
Well, we
you're 100% right.
Oh,
That has to be, and I'm going to tell you this. If
Go ahead,
Donald
go
Trump
ahead.
wins and he does not do that within the first 6 months, I'm disappointed. I'll say it publicly. That is number one.
Number one.
Ballot.
If you want to talk about, Joe, we started this conversation this second half talking about Kamala Harris, talking about democracy. If Trump doesn't do that, number one,
Number 1.
it's a failure. I don't care about anything else.
You have to show ID. No more mail-in ballots. Paper ballots, not electronic ballots where there could be a mistake or a
Right.
technological glitch. Paper. All
No
counted.
outside influences. Nothing.
Or you vote, you fill out your paper ballot on the spot, and it's voted on the spot with cameras and a police officer on site.
Right.
You will see a different election. You will see a different America. And that's why they won't do it. And that's why Donald Trump is a threat to democracy. It has nothing to do with democracy. It has everything to do with power. But we also have to take money out of politics.
But that's going
I
to
will-
come with the election integrity,
I will
Joe.
never, for the rest of my life, and I'll say this publicly, I'll say it to you, vote for an establishment candidate, Republican or Democrat. Never. Ever. You need independent outsiders who are not funded.
Let me
People-
ask you a question. Let me cut you off and ask you a question. If Robert F. Kennedy Jr. was the Democrat nominee running against Nikki Haley, who would you vote for?
I would vote for Kennedy before.
I
Nikki
think so too. I think so too. Because at least he's authentic.
Haley.
I don't
he's
believe
real. I just
I don't
disagree
think
with
I
him
don't
on
think
some
he's a
issues.
whack job on abortion, although
He's
there
also
are
nuts
Republicans.
on the environment too, a little nuts. But I'll be honest with you, he believes in America. He's a true Democrat.
He wouldn't want to throw us in jail.
No way. He believes in free speech. Robert Kennedy, I respect him as a human. I would go to lunch with Robert Kennedy. I would hang out, have a beer with Robert Kennedy, and I think he'd have a beer with me. He's not a bad man.
No.
I just disagree with him. And that's what we have to come to. He's an outsider. Not only do we need outsiders, we need self-funded outsiders who could basically say to the super PACs, the lobbies and the unions and the special interests, not interested, keep your money. I have my money.
Right.
And I believe in the people of America. Those are the politicians I'm interested in. Any establishment Republican, I'm not voting for him. Democrat, because, and this is what I want. If one thing comes out of my message, the country does not represent you. If
Right.
you are a regular person, they don't represent you. We need to take the country back, and only an outsider will do it. They will give it back to you. That's the politician. I got news for you. A Democrat that believes in that mantra will do infinitely more than a Nikki Haley Republican who's going to do nothing for anyone except the establishment that put her there.
And except get us more entrenched in foreign wars. Let me give our viewers here at the front line with Joe and Joe watching us across social media, please like, subscribe, share. Joe, I want to throw something out there to you. You know they're nervous about election integrity. They're very nervous because, see, Chuck Schumer, when Trump put up, who did Trump put up first? Was it Gorsuch? Gorsuch was the first, then Kavanaugh, then Amy Coney Barrett.
Correct.
Okay?
Correct. That's
So
the
when
order.
Gorsuch's name was put up, Chuck Schumer was begging Mitch McConnell and Trump to withdraw Gorsuch's name. And why don't we come to a consensus? Why don't we come to a consensus? Moderate Supreme Court justice. Why don't we just put forth Merrick Garland's name? Now we know in hindsight what Chuck Schumer was doing. Merrick Garland comes across as a nice guy. Merrick Garland is a vicious, Marxist, anti-Catholic, violent revolutionary. And I'm going to tell you why. Number one, he sicked the federal government on Mark Houck for doing nothing other than praying in front of an abortion clinic. That's number one. He knew what he was doing. He knew what he was doing was wrong. He lied to Congress. He lied to Ted Cruz. He lied to Josh Hawley. He knew exactly what he's doing. He was sending a message to all Roman Catholics praying in front of abortion clinics. Don't do it, or else we're going to charge you with federal charges. That's number one. Number two, okay, he just got up there, and this is a hopeful thing, Joe. What I'm throwing to you here is a hopeful thing because they're scared. He just went up, of course, in a black church because he's pandering, all right? And the media is all covering how the Republicans, or no, I don't know if you've mentioned Republicans. I think he kept it like any attempt at election integrity or election reform is just another way of saying we don't want black people to vote.
That is the stupidest thing ever.
That's what he was saying, though.
No, I believe it, but that's the
what he was
narrative.
saying.
That's the narrative. In America, let me explain this to people who somehow listen to that. Anyone can vote. Anyone, anywhere. The doors are open. Who can't vote, and this doesn't make me a racist, are illegal immigrants because they don't pay taxes. That is not allowed. And that is why they're flying people to different places. That is why they let the borders be open, because they're trying to turn Texas and Arizona blue. And if Texas turns blue, they have power infinitely. And they know that. And yet the Republicans allow it. They don't do anything. If I know that, they know that. And they do know that. The fix is simple. You have to have the political will to do it.
Right.
And they just don't. And that's why, like I said, if Trump does not do what DeSantis did in Florida, first thing, that is not allowed anymore. Because I got news for you. It's not just MAGA people that don't believe in the election. Talk to people.
Right.
People don't have confidence in our elections anymore.
No, I don't.
Because of the controls that
here's the
need to be
thing.
in place.
Federal legislation has to be enforced, Joe Resinello. And you know what? You're not just enforcing it in Michigan, Pennsylvania, Georgia, Nevada, Arizona, Wisconsin. You have to enforce it in all 50 states. That means local elections, Joe. You following me?
No, I get it.
That
No,
means
everywhere.
No, that means California. See, because if you vote for Congress in California, I'd like to break it to some of these people, some of these libs in the media. Don't say that that's a local business. If you local issue, if you vote for a congressman in California, that has national repercussions. That changes or can change the balance of power within the United States House of Representatives. Ergo, that means therefore, for all the libs that might be listening to us, ergo, the federal government has an interest, a compelling interest in monitoring the state of California's elections and making sure.
I mean, I'll be honest with you. It's just simple controls. Like what I just laid out is a simple set of controls.
But what I'm saying is, your controls, and I know you're big on controls, and rightfully so. What I'm saying is those controls need to be enforced from the federal level through the Department of Justice against New York, against New Jersey, against California, to say you don't have, you have shown yourself to not be able to run free and fair elections. Plus, elections for Senate and House have national repercussions. So the people of Texas or the people of Arizona, we do have an interest in your elections, and the federal government could step in and enforce, Joe Resinello, my point is, those very controls.
I think that has to happen because, again, people don't have confidence in the election system. You can't call yourself a democracy if you don't. And here's another thing. People who don't pay taxes can't vote.
They can't vote.
And
if you don't have an ID, I'm sorry.
They can't vote. Sorry, that doesn't work. It's not the way it works.
Yeah,
and that is the only reason why the border is open. You don't have to build a wall. You make it impossible for them to vote. I got news for you. They won't let them in anymore. That's exactly right.
Right.
That's exactly right. That's the only reason why they were allowed in is to vote. And anyone who thinks otherwise is either naive or frankly delusional.
Listen,
That's why.
I agree
And
with you.
in the process, they're destroying the infrastructure of American cities. Liberal politicians are speaking out against it. Eric Adams in New York. He's hardly Josh Hawley. And this is, again, you know what it is, Joe? I'm going to be honest with you. People know what I'm saying. Many people know what I'm saying is I could lay out some very, very practical reasons why Donald Trump should be elected. One of which is election integrity. They don't care because they want power too. You see, many people's true colors are being shown. It's not about equity. It's not about democracy. It's not about power. It's not about justice. It's about power, and I want mine.
Well, who's the senator you mentioned to me from Oklahoma? What's his name again?
Friggin', I could see his face. I know exactly who you're talking about.
Yeah, and he voted with the Democrats on the
they're probably going to give him some, and he's super quote unquote conservative on a lot of things. But my point is, that's why, Joe, I don't trust any of them. I want outsiders. I want people, frankly, like I said, I'll use two extremes, two very radical extremes. Bernie Sanders is an outsider. I don't agree with Bernie Sanders, but he's not bought in. Vivek Ramaswamy is an outsider. He's not bought in. Couldn't be different. Those are the type of politicians. I want people who are like, I'm not interested in the establishment. I'm interested. Bernie Sanders believes what he believes. I don't believe what he believes, but at least he has some integrity.
Well, that's why they dropped the hammer on him, because
Well,
Hillary
that's
Clinton
my
had
point.
no integrity.
And those are the type of people we need to fix America, because the way it works right now, it's not about you people. So I got news for you. That's why I'm not getting, it's not even worth having the discussion. Okay, we'll agree to disagree on abortion. Do you actually think that the Republicans are going to do anything about abortion?
No.
No. It's a waste of time. Do you actually think? Do you think they're going to do anything about immigration? Seriously? No. They're not. Until we take the country back. Then we'll have the conversation. Until then, we have to know who the enemy is. And I got news for you. That's why people, it's like someone going down in a boat. If the boat is sinking, you're not going to argue about shoelaces. The boat is sinking in the middle of the Pacific Ocean.
Got to plug the hole somehow.
And you got to help each other, or everyone drowns. And we'll talk about those things later, because the boat for regular people, I got news for you. Look what's going on in Europe to the middle class.
Well, Joe, look at the way the Europeans attack their own people. Look at the way we started this conversation talking about Justin Trudeau. Look at the way he's treating the regular people. He knows that people don't go in for all this nonsense, so they want to criminalize free speech. Joe Biden and Merrick Garland have made it clear that their enemy is the American people. I'm sorry, Donald Trump never did that. Donald Trump called the media the enemy of the American people, because they are. Donald Trump criticized the Democrat Party because they're insane. They're not just wrong, they're insane when you look at the things that they say that they support. Okay, Donald Trump never did that. All the elites have gone after the regular people, and they have made the regular people, no matter who you are, regular people, their enemy. E. Michael Jones happens to think that that there is an uprising that against smug elites, that there is starting to be, let's say, a raising of our national.
I would agree with that.
To say, we know that you're elitist. We know that you're actually a smug elitist. We don't like what you're pushing on us, and we're going to push back against you. And not for nothing, it might sound like they're not small examples. When you look at the trucker convoy in Canada last year, when you look at the farmers spraying manure on the government buildings in France, when you look at what's his name, Geert Wilders getting elected in the Netherlands, okay, when you look at a lot of these things, you say, doesn't seem to me like people are rolling over. So, Joe, I'm going to give you the last word, even though I do want to mention this because I think Shane is wrong. Shane's in the chat room. He said, not too long ago, we said Nikki Haley would beat Trump. Now, Shane, you might be right.
No, I did say that. I did
Oh,
say
you did? Okay, because I don't
did.
remember.
I thought, because I didn't think they'd allow him to go this far. But Shane, it's not over yet. And believe me, they're going to fight Donald Trump tooth and nail. And I'll be honest with you, I wouldn't even be surprised if they kill him. Because they mean business, Shane. So clearly I don't know everything, and I threw it out there. I didn't think he'd get this far. To be honest,
He's not only getting far, Joe, like he just trounced everybody.
No, I know. California, by the way, 74 to 21%, Nikki Haley. Donald Trump, 74%. California.
See, and that's the thing. So you would think Republicans in California would be anti-MAGA. Evidently, they're not. Joe Rossinello, we got to leave it there, though, because go ahead. You want a final comment?
No, I'm just, Susan in the chat room said, how do we do it? I think we have to do two things. We have to control the message. How do we do that? We have to take back our schools. We have to take back the press. You take back the press by lowering the standards of libel and slander by getting judges. Judges do that. And through lawsuits. We can't buy in. Frankly, we have to tune out the voices. I don't listen to the mainstream media. I do my own research. Tune out the voices, and we have to protect our children from those voices. We have to raise another generation, frankly, that's grounded in God and family, because that's the only way you're going to teach morality. You can't legislate morality, and that provides a North Star outside of the state. And that North Star will guide the future generation. That's how you do it. That starts in your own home. And if everyone started to do that, the future would be brighter.
Well, Joe Rossinello, that's a great place to end it. Thank you for that. Thank you all out there for joining us at the front line with Joe and Joe. Please, if you like this conversation, share it. You know you're seeing it somewhere on social media. Just hit the share button and share it. Hit the thumbs up. Like it. That's if you like us. If you don't like us, that's okay. At least you'll listen to us. But try to help us out if you like what we're doing. We really appreciate it. We're here Thursday nights, 9 o'clock Eastern time. I think they're going to have to kill us to get us to stop doing this show. So if we're talking to 5 people, they might. If we're talking to 5 people or 5 million people, all right, the truth is the truth. And it's like Joe always says, it's like a roaring lion. You let the truth, the truth will defend itself. So Joe and I are doing our part, okay? But God willing, this show grows and we can get out to a wider audience. But we're doing our part and we're stepping into the breach. We know you are too. So share this video so other people could see it. Thank you once again. And remember, until the next time, that our conversation is your conversation. And that conversation is going on everywhere. We'll talk to you soon.